Alrighty, hello everyone, Madam Chair. The meeting is now live and you can feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Great, thanks Annie. Hi everyone, it's good to see you guys. Haven't seen you guys for a bit. So I guess we'll just start off with, I'm just going to take a quick attendance and then we'll move on to committee check-in. I know we have the agenda, but since Sabrina, you're only going to be here for a little bit, we might move a couple things around just so we have a quorum now so that we can approve a couple things and then continue on that way. So if we jump around the agenda, that would be the reason why. Okay, so do you want to start off with a check-in then? Would anyone like to go first? Just how you're doing, what's been keeping you busy, that sort of thing.
I guess I can start. Yeah, you guys haven't seen me in a while, so I've been very busy. For those who don't know me, I'm Sabrina. I'm 19. I'm a nursing student right now at Université Sainte-Anne, so I'm bilingual. And then, yeah, so I've been really busy with my clinicals. I haven't had time to sit down and, actually participate to what you guys have been doing. So I'm really excited to see what you guys come up with and how this has moved on.
Thanks, Sabrina. Anyone want to go next?
I'll go next. My name's Alyssa. I'm a graduate student from École Secondaire Mosaic, and I'm finishing my last year in at home online. So I'm doing online schooling right now. That's keeping me busy and just trying to stay active and stuff. That's pretty much all I've been doing.
Awesome. Thanks. Cheyenne, did you want to go next then?
Yeah, I can go. Can you hear me all right?
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing. So yeah, I'm Cheyenne. I just finished my second year at Mount St. Vincent University. I'm taking child and youth studies. By keeping busy, I've been going to like the COVID testing regularly. I've been volunteering at the rapid testing sites, and also I am my university's new volunteer coordinator for our new soup kitchen. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I'm the volunteer coordinator for our new soup kitchen, and I have to do food safety training. So I've been doing that online as well. And I'm happy to see you guys. I feel like it's been a while, so I hope you're all doing well.
Great. Thanks, Cheyenne. Anyone else want to go next?
I can go next. My name is Stacy. I'm actually graduated last spring from Dow with my kinesiology degree. Going back to school this fall, UME Fredericton for my Bachelor of Education, so super excited. I'm actually not in Halifax right now. I'm in my hometown, St. John, New Brunswick right now. Got out as things got pretty bad in Halifax, so kind of feel bad for all of you guys. Hope you guys are staying safe and getting tested regularly. Yeah, I've been pretty busy with a lot of the other organizations I work with, so super excited to finally be able to come and see what kind of things we can.
Awesome, thanks. I see Jocelyn just joined us. Hi, Jocelyn. We're just doing a quick check-in, kind of what you've been doing, how you're doing, what's been keeping you busy. Do you want to give us a little check-in?
Yeah, for sure. I've got dogs running around here, so hopefully they don't make any noise. Kind of crazy, but yeah, I'm doing well. So yeah, I'm Jocelyn. I'm just finishing my first year in the PhD in clinical psychology program at Dow. So I'm currently right now I'm doing my child assessment practicum. So that's been a little bit hard because everything moved online. So like during all of my testing, it got a little complicated and we had to rush through some things. But overall, it's been really good. So that's been definitely keeping me busy. Lots of learning and that sort of thing. But yeah, and just walking outside with all of the dogs. So it's been good. Yeah. And it's great to see you all too. Yeah, that's it for me.
Great, thanks. Quickly, my name is Ellen. I am currently at Mount St. Vincent University doing general studies currently. and also working. So I'm staying busy with that. And I just moved. So that was kind of crazy. So I'm just settling into my new place. So that's been keeping me busy, finding a home for everything and just moving stuff in general. So yeah, would anyone else like to do a check-in? Okay, great. Okay, so next thing we're going to move on to is approval of the minutes. So for both November meeting as well as the March meeting. So that was on November 19th, 2020 and March 25th, 2021. So is there any changes that anyone would like to make to the minutes before we approve them? Okay, so I will call for a motion to approve the minutes of the November 19th, 2020 meeting and March 25th, 2021 Youth Advisory Committee meetings. So can I request a mover and a seconder on that?
I'll be the mover.
Thank you, Stacy.
I second that.
Great, thank you. Great, so sorry about that. Okay, so Stacy moved that and Jocelyn seconded that. Great. Okay, so next we have approval of the order of business and approval of additions and delegations. So,
Hi, Ellen.
hi.
Sorry, it's Annie. So we had a mover and a seconder for that, but we still need the committee to vote on it at large.
Okay.
So for the approval of the minutes. So if you just want to call the question on that motion, it's moved and seconded, ready on the floor to be voted on.
Sure. Great. Thanks for catching that, Annie. So all those in favor, say aye, or I guess raise your hand.
Aye.
Great. Anyone opposed? Great. Okay, so the motion is carried. Okay, so now moving on to the approval of order of business and approval of additions and delegations. So if there are no other additions or delegations to the committee, can we proceed with the motion then? Okay, so I'll call for a motion again. So a mover and a seconder, please.
I'll move.
And I'll second.
Great. Thank you, Cheyenne and Jocelyn. Okay, and then all those in favor, say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Great. And all those opposed? Great. Okay, so that motion has been carried. So business arising out of the minutes, there is none. So we'll move along to call for declaration of conflict of interest. So does anyone have a conflict of interest for the meeting tonight? Okay, great. So consideration of deferred business, we have none. So we're going to move along to correspondence. So Annie, do we have any correspondence?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There has been no correspondence received for this meeting.
Great. And moving on to, we don't have any information items brought forward. So we're moving on to reports, and we have Becca Bishop to give a presentation about the youth service plan. So I'll pass it off to Becca now.
Thank you. Is the PowerPoint up there? Yeah, okay. Can everyone see that? Okay, our screen sharing is working, Annie. Okay, so we have, as a committee, talked about the youth service plan many times. The first youth service plan has come to an end, so I just wanted to provide an update on where we're at with the engagement for the second plan. Next slide, please. So the first youth service plan was completed in 2020. There's a report going to council in the coming months that highlights some of the work that was done throughout that first youth service plan. One of the key highlights, or I guess accomplishments from that youth service plan, was the creation of a training for recreation staff that was called Friendly Faces, Friendly Spaces. And that was to help create more youth-friendly spaces in our recreation centers. So now that we're done that first youth service plan, there's tons of work happening on the second plan. And so we've kind of already dived into the engagement. There's been multiple workshops happening around the municipality. We had to switch to virtual for obvious reasons. So we were able to make some great connections in the schools. And there are over 200 workshops held. So we were able to get into the junior highs and high schools, and we're able to do a few in-person workshops before COVID restrictions came. Next slide, please. So the idea was to start with workshops and in-person engagements to get an idea of the key issues that youth are facing across the municipality. And of course, we heard a broad range of answers depending on the community, rural versus urban, those sorts of things. So from all the data that we collected in each of those workshops, we sort of sorted it and identified the top 5 areas that the next youth service plan will focus on. Once we had those top 5 areas, we recruited a team of youth that acted as not a committee, but a little group of youth that was called the Youth Service Plan Youth Team. And they're a group of youth that we consistently engage with to get feedback on the next youth service plan. Even just little things like, okay, we're doing a survey. How can we get this out to youth? What's the best way to do it? And the idea is really for all this engagement to be youth-led. So we have a team of 12 to 14 youth. And so once we identified those top priorities, we then tried to come up with a way to break down each priority to learn more about it and what we can do in the youth service plan to accomplish those things. And so that is where we created a survey, and the survey was launched just a couple days ago, but it hasn't really been promoted on our corporate communication accounts yet. So you'll see that being promoted, if you haven't already, through different social media outlets in the next coming days. But that survey is really important because it's breaking down all of those key areas into very specific tasks so that we can identify what can we actually deliver on that falls under these themes that youth are really, really saying are a priority. So that survey will close on June 25th. And I'm hoping that you as a committee can take the survey and also share it with your networks. There's a lot of cool prizes you can win for doing the survey. There's Apple AirPods, some gift cards, that sort of thing. So I think Annie's going to put this PowerPoint up, and the link is in the PowerPoint at the end, so you'll be able to access that. And then so once we have the survey closed, there's still a few more steps we're going to have to take, and that'll be organizing and sorting the data into the actual goals of the youth service plan. And we also want to make sure that we're getting feedback from internal and external stakeholders. So other youth service providers, what are they hearing? What trends are coming up in youth services that they think should be also incorporated within the youth service plan? Next slide, please. And so these are the 5 areas that came up to be the most important to youth. So youth dedicated spaces that have drop-in and unstructured programming, So things like that would be like the multi-service youth centers that are in like the Den in Lower Sackville. I think we've all spoken about that before. Mental health support for youth, which is a given, youth-friendly outdoor spaces, life skills programs and workshops. So a lot of stuff around budgeting and financing and just practical life skills, resume building, banking, that sort of stuff. And the last one was local government and community involvement. So some of those things are around how can youth give input on municipal projects, how can they be more involved within municipal government, and also how can they be more involved within their communities. Next slide, please. And so, yeah, where does this committee fit in, and what can you contribute to? Obviously, this service plan really is guiding what we will do as a municipality for youth over the coming next 3 years, and your voices are kind of at the front of all of this. So taking the survey and sharing it with your networks, as I said, will be really important. But once we close the survey and start organizing the data, it would be great to have the committee involved in some capacity, and also to help determine, okay, we have one goal. The goal is to support well-being of mental youth. Well, what are the action items for each goal? How can we actually implement that to achieve it? And then also the launch. So when we actually complete the report or the service plan and we have it branded and we're ready to send it around, it would be really good to have some of that come from the Youth Advisory Committee. And yeah, the last piece is just kind of the sustainability of it and how we move action items forward, and just making sure the committee has a voice on how a lot of that's happening. And that's it. But at the bottom there, you can see the link to the survey. So please, yeah, take it and share it around, try to win some prizes. And yeah, if you have any questions, you all have my email.
Great. Thanks, Becca. Do we have any questions for Becca? Okay, if there are no questions for Becca, then I guess we'll move on. Thanks, Becca, for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Okay, so next thing on our agenda is the proposed 2021 Youth Advisory Committee meeting schedule. So the draft meeting schedule was emailed out. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see that. Hi, Shelby. Is there any changes you guys would like to make to the schedule? I know the timing was from 5 to 7 for every meeting, and I just wanted to check with you guys and see how that works for your schedules, or if the timing should be changed, that sort of thing.
The thing is, we will have enough content to cover those 2 hours.
Annie, I see you have your hand up. Go for it.
Hi, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, it certainly would depend on the meeting for sure. I think we're going to be having a discussion later on about the work plan and, some projects that the group can work on together for the rest of the year. I think that there is definitely, the ability to take up 2 hours. But generally, like when we're putting together an agenda, we have a bit of an understanding of, the length of time that it's going to take. So it's not necessarily that the 2 hours needs to be a necessity, but rather just making sure that that's a place that people have held in their calendars. We know there's folks have a lot of other things going on. So mostly just to make sure that there's a time and space for folks to gather virtually for the time being to chat about youth advisory initiatives.
Great. Thanks, Annie. Does that answer your question, Sabrina?
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I guess time-wise, 5 to 7, is that gonna be a good time for everyone? Or is that something we need to take a look at for a different time? I know we had in the past done different timings, and I just wanted to check to see if the other timing had worked better or if this was a better time. I see everyone's able, quite a few people will be able to make it, so. Okay, great. In that case, we will I'll ask for a mover and seconder so we can move this forward.
I can move it.
Great, thanks, Rita.
I can second it.
Thank you. Okay, so all those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Great. Anyone opposed? Great. Okay. So that motion was moved. So that's going to be our schedule for 2021 for the rest of our meetings. Okay. So next thing is our work plan discussion. So just I know we had made kind of a work plan in the past, and then due to COVID and all kinds of other things, we weren't able to kind of continue with that work plan and follow through on that. So I wanted to kind of just review that and see kind of where our priorities are at, if they've changed, and focus on our priorities for the Youth Advisory Committee. So I think kind of the best way to do this is for us to kind of take a minute and think about where our priorities are and what we as the Youth Advisory Committee would like to address. And then maybe go around and say our top 3 priorities and kind of discuss that and identify where everyone's priorities are at, kind of maybe why they picked that priority and kind of what we could do, that sort of thing. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to think about that, and then we can, if someone knows right away, wants to start where their priorities are, then feel free to jump in and start us off.
Madam Chair, maybe while folks are thinking about the priorities, would it be all right if I maybe just kind of maybe contextualize the work plan a little bit by maybe sharing some pieces from the terms of reference or things that could kind of, you know, get the old brain juices flowing?
Sure thing. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly. So the first thing that I'm going to bring up here is just the terms of reference for the committee. So I'm going to specifically be focusing on the objectives and the duties of the committee. And then once we kind of go through this piece, I can put up the draft work plan that was circulated because this group has already identified at an earlier meeting 5 different priorities that they wanted to work on. So just kind of wanted to provide some reminders as to like kind of how all of these pieces can work together. So these are the terms of reference for the Youth Advisory Committee, and they are attached to the work plan document that was circulated in your agenda. It's like at the bottom of the work plan document, there's a link there. So if you want to follow along there, you're welcome to do so. But going into the objectives of the committee, just wanted to, before we kind of delve into the conversation about like setting priorities, just wanted to, remind folks where kind of like why the Youth Advisory Committee is created to function this way, and kind of, the different avenues that the committee can take to achieve some of its objectives. So under objectives, the section 5 here is the advice provided by the committee will be guided by the following objectives. A, the full participation of youth in civic and community affairs by ensuring that policies, programs, and services do not impose barriers to such participation. B, increased civic and community awareness regarding youth communities within the municipality by promoting effective communication. C, the elimination of barriers facing youth. And D, the provision of an equitable opportunity for the municipality's youth communities to voice their views on youth and other issues affected by monitoring the effectiveness of the municipality's policies, programs, and services. So a lot of, as the Youth Advisory Committee is an advisory body by nature, these are kind of the objectives of the pieces that folks can work on within this space. And then kind of moving in down into the duties of the committee. This speaks a little bit more as to like how it is kind of done. So section 6 outlines that the committee shall advise council through the executive standing committee on matters related to youth as follows. A, identify and advise on youth access to existing and proposed municipal services and facilities. B, advise and make recommendations about strategies designed to achieve the objectives of the committee. And C, receive and review information directed to it by council and its committees and to make recommendations as requested. And then also, if there was a situation where, some council was working on something and they really wanted to ensure that youth were incorporated into the perspectives that were being put forward, section 7 here would provides that the chief administrative officer of the municipality can direct the youth advisory committee to provide some advice on some projects that they're working on. And there's other pieces here around, hosting like consultations, but largely because the Youth Advisory Committee functions as an advisory body, the things that you work on and the things that you want to learn more about are serving to kind of inform the work that council does from a youth perspective and how, youth perspectives and kind of like programs need to be taken into consideration at the regional council realm. So I'll stop sharing this screen and then maybe ask Haruka if she wouldn't mind bringing up just the work plan document. So the earlier on in the year, the Youth Advisory Committee identified 5 kind of like priorities that the group would like to work on. So the first one, and this is, to my understanding, is not in a particular order, but just kind of, listing them all out there. The first is mental health accessibility for youth, especially with COVID-19. 2 is systemic racism for Indigenous and Black Nova Scotian communities. 3 is transit. 4 is lack of access to programming and opportunities for youth in rural and lower income communities. And 5, climate change and environmental issues. So I think the intent here in terms of like creating the work plan would be for folks to identify 3 of these 5 priorities as a group, hopefully that you would like to, work on for the rest of the year. And then we would kind of, go through the motions once folks have identified their priorities as to, how those pieces could align with the terms of reference that we just kind of did a quick once over of. And then we could talk about, how you want to either learn more or affect change to that within the municipality. So often this comes in the form of, asking for either organizations within the municipality or asking for business units within the municipality to provide information on what they're doing from either a youth perspective or on a particular topic that you folks are interested in doing. And then once you've gathered all of that information, you can provide a recommendation report or a presentation of sorts to the executive standing committee to let them know kind of what you've been learning and what you would like to see be worked on from a youth perspective. So that is kind of the overarching kind of goal of kind of working through this document today, identifying priorities, starting to think about how we kind of make those pieces come to fruition by the end of the year. And then what I will do is I will be taking notes throughout the entire conversation that folks are having, and with the intent of coming back to the June meeting, presenting the kind of the Youth Advisory Committee work plan in a draft format for approval at the June meeting. Recognize that I just kind of threw a lot of information there. So if folks have any additional questions before we kind of delve into the kind of priority identifying piece, I'm happy to take questions.
So I have a question. So first question is like, we don't have those 3 major points set yet, do we? No, we don't. Okay, so my second one is, could we have like a poll with all 5 like points, and then like the 3 ones that get the most votes are going to be the ones we focus on, I guess, and then we move from there. Like, this is just a suggestion, I guess.
Thank you. If I had been smart, unfortunately I wasn't, I would have put together a poll in Zoom to have distributed to the members ahead of time. My brain wasn't there when we were chatting about this earlier, kind of like planning for everything. But if folks like want to have like a general discussion, I actually might be able to put that together now and then launch it within this space. We would just need to make sure that we are like verbally communicating what the answer or what the kind of priorities end up being identified as, so that that can be, you know, maintained as a part of the public record. But yeah, I mean, either like depending on kind of like the will of the committee, if folks would like me to put together a poll right now, I can certainly do that. We can either, you know, take a break while I do that, or if folks kind of want to chat about some of the things that they've been thinking about from a priority standpoint, welcome to do that also. So I will serve at the direction of the committee.
And I had another question, I guess, from I saw on like the second point was like systemic racism for Indigenous and Black African Nova Scotians. When you read that, from my understanding, is like systemic racism for like Indigenous like people and like African Nova Scotians, but like when you say Black, right? Like there's more than just African Nova Scotian. So does that include them too or not? Because in the name, it doesn't sound like it. And like, I'm talking on my behalf, type of situation is like, I cannot identify as an African Nova Scotian, but I can identify as Black. So that can create confusion in people in our community because they can identify as Black, maybe even African, but maybe not African Nova Scotian. You know what I mean? So I don't know if in that topic we need clarification or a rename or something.
Yeah, great point. I think if it doesn't include everyone, that I think from what I was considering around that discussion, if Sabrina, you think the word change is the best option, then I totally agree. Was everyone else on that one? Anyone opposed to it? Great. Okay, so I guess we will make that word change. Thank you for bringing that up, Sabrina.
So I will, I'll update the wording for that particular priority in the poll here. So is the wording that that the committee is looking for, is it both Black and African Nova Scotian, or like Indigenous comma Black? Like I think I just want to make sure that I'm capturing what the committee would like.
The name would be kind of long, but it is necessary because it would be Black, African Nova Scotian, because they're all different, but we're all the same, but they're all different, you know.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Great. Does anyone want to discuss the priorities? Does anyone have anything that stands out in their mind that is a top priority for them, or anything like that? We could start the discussion around.
I'd like to kind of maybe start off on that first one, mental health accessibility for youth, especially with COVID-19. Just from a post-secondary perspective, I launched a support network for these individuals because those are the kind of, I don't want to say the most impacted, but one of the most impacted demographics is the post-secondary students in Canada, and obviously Nova Scotia. They just have, they're struggling to not be around their peers, online learning, being isolated from their campuses. I just feel like that's something that really needs to be addressed and to make those services accessible. And as someone who has tried accessing the services that are provided by the city and the province, I haven't had the best experience with just being able to access the help I need. So I feel like that's something that really needs to be addressed, just from my own personal experience of trying to get access to that.
Awesome. Yeah, great points for sure. Thank you, Stacey. Anyone else want to add on to that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't have direct experience trying to access resources, and I'm not a student in primary or elementary or high school and during COVID, but what I have experienced just through like my assessments is that there's a lot of anxiety about COVID. So I was doing assessments before the third wave hit, and then it hit and everything shifted, and I noticed drastic differences that I can't say directly were related to COVID, but also a lot of these kids that needed that extra help and were being pulled out of class just for some specialized tutoring and that sort of thing. I'm wondering what's being done online now, just within the HRM for students, whether they're struggling with a particular ability or skill in a particular subject, or if they actually have like a learning disability in reading, writing, spelling, or oral language. So yeah, I'm just sort of wondering, like, just in general, what schools are doing, like if there's any online programs, if there's any programs where schools come together, because it's very prevalent. And I think it's kind of like the other silent thing going on. So yeah. Like aligned with mental health, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jocelyn. I agree with both Stacey and Jocelyn. I think mental health is one of our top priorities. And I know we have discussed mental health a lot in the past as well, but before COVID even, and then with COVID now on top of that. So yeah, I agree. I think mental health is something that's really important. Anyone else have any other thoughts on any other priorities around?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Looking at this list, to be honest, when I thought of my top three, I didn't even like the mental health one. I hadn't put in my top three, but hearing from you guys, it makes me realize that yes, of course, I think it should be. It's like talking about better mental health supports has been something that I have talked about on different youth councils ever since I was in grade 7, and I'm in my second year of university now. And I feel like we talk about it all the time, and it's hard to actually get things done. And like, you can see some differences, like maybe there'll be more resources available, but then the need is so prevalent, especially now, it just fills up, and then the problem, it still exists. So I don't know what we could do as a youth council, but I think it would be really nice to brainstorm some way we can create some actual change to better support the youth in this community.
Awesome. Thanks, Shane. Anyone else on, so I know we've talked a lot about mental health. What about any of the other priorities there? Does anyone else feel very strongly about anything else on that list as a priority for them?
Yeah, I guess for me would be the systemic racism. That would be like second to my list, if not first. But yeah, it's a topic like that needs a lot of help and a lot of consideration, especially in the past year that the year we went through, right? So it's been really hard. And it's like it's a topic that's there, everybody knows it, but we kind of ignore it in some way, or we try to like sweep it under the carpet. So like, just put a band-aid on it. And as youth, we really need to acknowledge it and be aware and voice it and talk about it, because I feel like talking about it is a way to solving an issue. Just not waiting until everything boils up and there we go. So I think as a youth committee, that's one thing we can help the youth to talk about.
I feel like even just putting out something to say that we support the cause, like if we, I feel like that should be something that we do now and then work on better ways to actually support the youth later on. But I think we should definitely put out something, especially with everything that's been going on. We should put out something to say our supports.
Go ahead, Annie. I see your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good news, I figured out the poll. So hopefully I figured out the poll. It doesn't have to happen now if folks would still like to continue discussion on the priorities before launching into the poll. Happy to kind of, do whatever the committee would like, but just wanted everyone to know that I think I figured it out.
Great, thank you, Annie. Shelby, Alyssa, you guys haven't said anything. Is there anything priority-wise you'd like to discuss or let us know, or are you just ready to vote?
What I was gonna say was basically taken out of my mouth by Sabrina, so lots of good points there.
For me, my top two priorities would definitely be mental health and systemic racism. So everything that you guys said so far, I'm full on board and agree.
Awesome, great. Well, I think that that kind of shows a very clear vision for us. So I guess we'll continue and do the vote. Would we like to discuss kind of any other priorities? I know we've talked a lot about these two, but I know we do have kind of a space for a third priority for us to work on. Is there one out of that list that stands out for us that is a good third priority for us to have and discuss now? So I know the other priorities were transit, programs for youth in rural and lower income areas, and there's one more as well. So I don't remember off the top of their head what the third one was.
I feel like
Climate change was the one, yeah.
Great, thank you. Yes, any thoughts on those three?
Yeah, I was saying like the one for the programs for low income families and youth that can afford some of the stuff is very needed. Like, especially now that stuff have moved online, like I know like tutoring, I don't know if like how they're managing with people who used to get tutored from people with the YMCA at the library or stuff like that. Like, how is that happening now online and stuff like that? Or just like they used to go meet up at like rec centers, but now they're like kind of confined at home. So are they like other programs that can be switched up for them to like, like learn and also have fun? Like, because that also kind of goes hand in hand with mental health. It keeps them occupied. It keeps them like from getting depressed and sad and anxious from staying at home and just, stuck behind a screen or just not even having that screen at home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Anyone else would like to add on to that, or any other comments about any other priorities?
I was just going to say that kind of fits in well with our mental health theme. So it's nice to have like two themes that kind of work well with one another. So that may be kind of a good fit that way, if you think about it.
I know it's tough. We had discussed these 5, we narrowed down to these 5 priorities. So we had quite a few other things that we would like to address. So I know it's hard to pick 3 from those 5 already narrowed down. So I know this is gonna be a hard decision. Any other last comments or thoughts, or are we ready to vote?
I think it's tough because, like, especially with the pandemic, because I would say a priority of a lot of the other members of this committee were very passionate about the transit issue in the city. And I feel like that's still an issue, especially when you compare it to other places around the world. But then also with the pandemic, I have so much compassion for these bus drivers. I feel like I don't want to push anything else on them. So it's very, very tough. But I think like without the pandemic, it is a very large issue that I would normally like to see changes done. But with the pandemic, I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think like before our priorities were in a very different place, and I think the pandemic has shifted that. Not only the pandemic, but just kind of over the past year, things have changed and how our priorities have shifted for sure. Anyone else, or are we ready to vote? Okay, I guess we're ready to vote then. Annie, Sabrina just had to leave, but she sent me an email with her priorities. So I have those, so I can add that into the vote as well. So I will, would you like me to send that to you, or am I able to do like a vote twice, one for Sabrina and one for myself?
To be honest, I'm not entirely certain as to how this is going to work. So maybe, Ellen, if you wouldn't mind sending me Sabrina's email, and I can put those in for Sabrina. So the way that I think the poll will work is that it's set up as a multiple choice, and the topic is just, yak. Nobody else is calling it that. I've been calling it that. I'm so sorry. The Youth Advisory Committee, the Youth Advisory Committee priorities, and then the prompt is for each member to pick 3 of the 5 priorities. Each of them are listed as individual items. So I will just ask, I know we have 2 other staff members here, and not that I anticipate that this would happen, but if we could just make sure that it's only committee members voting, and I will put in Sabrina's choices on my end. So I'm going to launch the poll, and then when everybody is done, I will let everybody know the results, and then we can start talking about the priorities. Cool. So I will launch right now.
I just sent my email to you, Annie. Can you just confirm when you've received it?
Yes, I have received it. Thank you so much. So just one sec. All right. So it actually won't let me input Sabrina's choices. But I'm just going to take one sec here because I don't think it changes. No, it's pretty clear. Okay, so I'm going to end polling because you can see it here. So I don't know how to. Wow, I'm learning all of this with you live. What a joy. So I will post this in the chat, but from the from the 5 priorities that were listed, the 3 priorities that were chosen pretty explicitly throughout the committee as the top 3 were mental health accessibility for youth, especially with COVID-19, systemic racism for Indigenous, Black, African, and African Nova Scotian communities, and lack of access to programming for opportunities for youth in rural and lower income communities. So congratulations, folks. You have your priorities identified, which is awesome. So congrats.
Great, and thank you, Annie, for doing the poll. Really appreciate that. Okay, great. So moving on to our next item is the meeting of our next date then, which will be June 17th, sorry, go ahead, Annie.
So sorry, I'm trying to do a couple of things at once here. So I was wondering if we could actually maybe have a bit of a conversation during this meeting about maybe what like some folks would like to learn from either organizations in the HRM on each of these topics or business units within the HRM on these topics. And I think, it was said earlier, I can't recall who said it, so I apologize, but I believe it was Stacy that said, like these pieces actually do kind of, all work together and inform one another. So I think that is really great for the work plan, if there is a desire to learn more and maybe make recommendations to council as to what other changes could be made or perspectives need to be taken into perspectives. If we are able to ask folks from different business units to come and present on what their business unit is doing on these particular issues, they can all kind of flow into one another. And I think particularly on the piece around access to programming, your community or your liaison is the community developer that sits on the committee. And I'm sure that Becca has quite a bit of insight as to, how programming is working within the Parks and Rec department within COVID. So, I think there are a ton of kind of resources and tools at your fingertips, and just kind of wanted to lay that out there that, we don't, I would like to just kind of let folks know that the terms of reference don't provide for the committee to be able to make people come to the committee and present, but when it's tied to the work plan, it definitely further legitimizes what the committee would like to work on. And we have friends in other kind of business units that I'm sure will be excited to update folks on the work that they're doing. So I am just updating the work plan right now so that it reflects the new priorities. So.
Great, thanks, Annie. So I guess the floor is open to anyone who has any suggestions on who we would like to have a presentation from, or where we would like to learn more about these topics. So. I'm going to suggest that we take a look at the kind of business units specifically related to these 3 topics. So maybe we could ask Becca to come in sometime and give us a presentation about what's going on currently with youth programming. maybe specifically around rural areas and lower income for kind of the programming side of it. For systematic racism, maybe we could have someone from diversity and inclusion. I haven't, maybe we could have someone come in from there. And I'm not quite sure on mental health, if there's a department or anyone we could chat to internally for HR about that. But maybe Becca or Annie might have some suggestions on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a recommendation off the top of my head right now, but I do think that there are some pieces here that would be also under the umbrella of diversity inclusion from a mental health perspective. So yeah, I think that could definitely be the case there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that will also fall under recreation, just mental well-being and the way certain programs are designed, therapeutic recreation approaches, that sort of thing.
Go ahead, Stacy.
There we go. I just thought of one organization that I've done some work with, Heartwood. They do a lot of stuff with a lot of the youth engagement. And I know they've been working on getting more access to that programming for youth in rural communities and lower income. So that might be someone we could tap into for sure.
Yeah, and I guess now would be a good time to ask around, I guess we can reach out to external providers for youth programming and different things like that and ask them to give a presentation at the end.
Yeah, so we can certainly, like express, the interest of the committee, let them know that, this is something that the committee is interested in learning a bit more on, particularly, to make recommendations to functions within council and all of that good stuff. So we can certainly do that, and that would kind of be my role as the legislative assistant to try to facilitate folks to be able to come and speak to those items. Can't necessarily say that that they will for sure come, but again, this process is great for saying these are the priorities of this space.
Yeah, great. And maybe even now that we have established those priorities for us, we can step away from this and do our own research on if there's an organization that stands out that we would like to discuss the work that they're doing on these priorities. And maybe then at our next meeting, suggest if there's someone or an organization that we would like to reach out to and see if they could come in and give a presentation. So I think we spoke about a few internal ones that we'd be interested in. If anyone has any other suggestions, but if not, I think this might be something good for us to go do our own research and think about, and then come back and have a discussion with some other organizations that could help us with these priorities. So yeah. And Stacy, I know you had mentioned you started your own organization for these supports. So maybe even if you wouldn't mind sometime, we could have you give a presentation of what you're doing and how that's working and that sort of thing. I know I'd be happy to hear about that. So
yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I would love to.
Great. So any other thoughts on priorities, organizations, anything like that that I'm thinking of right now? Any other thoughts at all about the priorities or anything? It'd be good to move on to our next. Go ahead, Amy.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Just wanted to say big thank you to everybody for committing to these priorities, for showing up today. I'm personally very excited to see all of this coming to fruition. So I will take the pieces that you've spoken about today. I'll work with Haruka, colleague in the clerk's office who's also taking minutes right now, and I'll also work with Becca so that we can come back to the June meeting with maybe a bit more kind of info around different business units, or maybe particular sections of business units that folks can that we can reach out to. I'll also take some time to make sure that we understand like how all of this kind of aligns with the terms of reference that informs the committee or forms the work that the committee does. So I will come back to you with a more kind of cohesive document for our June meeting, and I'll make sure that that's circulated before that time. But certainly with the kind of intent of the committee to do some research for some organizations that they would like to hear from, this document will continue to be a fluid piece until it's adopted. So just wanted to say thank you very much for your work.
Great, thank you, Annie. Okay, so if there's any other last thoughts, if not, we'll move on to the date of our next meeting. Sorry. Any final thoughts? Okay, so we approved the schedule, and so our next meeting will be on June 17th. And so I guess we'll just go around and do a quick checkout. Would anyone like to start us off with just how you're feeling about the meeting today? Any other thoughts about the what we accomplished today, anything like that?
Well, I'll start. I was just going to say how I'm happy how we narrowed it down to our top 3. And I think these 3 choices are very important and impactful. So I'm excited to get moving on this and hopefully have some outcomes coming soon. So.
Yeah, I'll kind of talk about how I feel. I think these are also 3 great priorities, and I kind of like how all 3 of them really work well together. I think, mental health and, the systemic racism, there's a lot of bad mental health effects that come from that. And then same with the lack of access to programming opportunities. They all kind of intersect one another really well. So I think it'll be great to work on these, and I'm excited to see what kind of change we can make.
I can go. Yeah, I think this was a great and productive meeting. It's so great to see all of your faces again. I know we're all very, very busy people, but it's really nice to make a set plan, and I'm looking forward to see what comes out of it.
I think the ideas we came up with were very good today, and just lots of progress made, and I can't wait to continue with these ideas.
Yeah, I agree and echo with what everyone's been saying. I think I'm happy that we identified our top 3 priorities, and I do like how they all sort of come together, and we've all been through a lot regarding likely those priorities in some way, or whether we know people that have been affected by COVID, or sort of last year around this time was like Black Lives Matter, Indigenous Lives Matter, that sort of thing. So I think these priorities are all very relevant, and I think we can make some good headway on them.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everyone. I completely agree. I'm really excited to see what comes at our next meeting and what we come up with. So I guess just a final thought of we can all independently do our own research on what we would like to see, any organizations and things like that. So kind of take away from this. Yeah, so I guess if there's anything else, or if there's not anything else, sorry, we'll adjourn the meeting then. So can I have someone move this? We can adjourn. Great, thank you, Cheyenne. Okay, so Cheyenne has adjourned the meeting, and that is at 11 after 6. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
On there.
It's not a municipal park. I don't worry about it. It's provincial, remember?
Yeah. Tony doesn't have any dog litter problems at Shuby, do you?
We know we have lots. We don't